So we were going to talk about the tiara.
Will we?
Yeah.
I thought it said no.
I know, but I just think it would look so fabulous if you
Yeah, but
did.
I've only got little tiny tiaras. They're not really worth it.
The room had been prepared for a routine examination of royal jewels. Instead, it became the setting for a humiliation no one present could undo. When the jewelers placed the Queen Mother's diamond tiara on the table and revealed the name attached to its private inheritance record, Camilla's expression changed instantly. The piece was not destined for the Queen Consort. It had been left to Princess Charlotte, and within minutes, Camilla was walking out. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla had entered Windsor expecting clarity, not rejection. The private jewelry review, a closed examination used to confirm ownership, condition, and inheritance of important family pieces, brought together specialist jewelers, royal representatives, records, Charles and William. She believed several jewels linked to earlier queens would remain available for senior royal use. The diamond tiara seemed part of that continuity. The lead jeweler opened the authenticated inheritance file and spoke plainly. The Queen Mother's diamond tiara had been privately designated for Princess Charlotte, protected until she reached the appropriate age to take formal possession. Princess Charlotte, the young daughter of William and Catherine in the direct line of succession, was absent, yet suddenly her name controlled the room. Camilla leaned forward, read it herself, removed her glasses, and asked for the conclusion to be repeated. Charles watched his wife's face harden. He asked whether a ceremonial loan might still be possible, meaning the jewel could potentially be worn temporarily without changing its ownership. But Camilla heard something else in his question, confirmation that the inheritance itself could not simply be undone. The tiara had bypassed her and moved toward the next generation of the Wales family. The jewelers then delivered the second blow. Charlotte's designation had not appeared once by chance. A separate private inventory entry repeated the same instruction, showing that the choice had been deliberate. Camilla asked who had known beforehand. No one answered. The silence told her that this revelation had a history. Camilla pushed her chair back. She left the folder untouched and told Charles she would not remain in a room where a decision affecting her position had already been settled without her. Then she walked out before the review had formally ended. William did not follow. He stayed with the jewelers, stared at the file, and asked the question that changed the direction of the entire dispute. When exactly had Charlotte's name been placed in the record? Camilla's exit looked impulsive, but the deeper shock remained on that table, because Charlotte's inheritance was about far more than diamonds. A royal jewel is never merely a jewel. In one family, it can become a verdict on belonging, succession, memory, and trust. For Camilla, the diamond tiara represented recognition she believed came with becoming queen. For William and Catherine, Charlotte's inheritance carried an entirely different meaning. And for Charles, trapped between wife, son, and granddaughter, one object had suddenly exposed a division he could no longer smooth over with protocol. Camilla left the jewelry review carrying more than anger. She had spent years fighting for acceptance inside the monarchy, and becoming queen had finally given her the public authority she once lacked. That was why access to historic royal jewels mattered so deeply to her. Some pieces were privately owned, while others belonged to the crown collection, meaning jewels held for the monarchy rather than for one individual. To Camilla, that distinction suddenly felt painfully personal. She entered a small adjoining room and stopped beside the fireplace. An aide quietly asked whether she wanted tea. Camilla refused without looking up. Then she asked the question that revealed what was truly hurting her. Did everyone else already know? The aide hesitated, and that hesitation only deepened the wound. She was no longer wondering about diamonds. She was wondering whether she had been the last person in the family to understand her place. Charles followed moments later. He told her that Charlotte's inheritance was not a public rejection of her, and that no one had arranged the meeting to humiliate her. Camilla answered that intention no longer mattered. In that room, the Queen Mother's tiara had passed symbolically over the reigning queen and toward a child. Charles tried to reassure her, but even he knew the symbolism was difficult to ignore. William remained with the jewelers, and his concern moved in the opposite direction. He told them quietly that Princess Charlotte must never be dragged into an adult dispute. The young royal represented the next generation of the direct line, the family branch expected to carry the monarchy forward through William and Catherine. Her inheritance was about continuity, not victory. Catherine agreed, but she understood immediately how dangerous the story could become. Charlotte's name could easily become a weapon in older tensions she had never created. The lead jeweler then disclosed something more serious through the authenticated record. Charlotte had not merely been named as the future recipient. The instruction prevented the tiara from being reassigned, permanently altered, or absorbed into another personal collection. Charles soon learned that private ownership had been deliberately separated from crown-held jewelry, which meant even the king could not simply reverse the decision. Charles returned to the table and closed the folder with both hands. He said the matter would be discussed privately. William did not move. Before anything else happened, he wanted the original instruction read in full. And that demand pulled the family backward toward the private conversation that had placed Charlotte's name there in the first place. Long before Camilla walked out of that room, the fate of the tiara had already been decided. The turning point came during a private jewelry review that few people ever regarded as important at the time. One elderly custodian, one handwritten inventory, and one carefully chosen name transformed the future of the piece. What looked in the present like a sudden insult had actually begun years earlier, with a deliberate decision designed to prevent exactly this kind of dispute. The Queen Mother's diamond tiara had never been treated like ordinary ceremonial property. It belonged to a private collection, meaning its future could be controlled by personal inheritance instructions rather than automatically passing with the crown. That distinction mattered because generations of the family had worried that deeply personal jewels could eventually lose their original meaning if they simply moved from one reigning household to another. The decisive moment came during a private Windsor inventory meeting shortly after Princess Charlotte made one of her first major childhood appearances at a family ceremony. A senior custodian raised a concern that several privately inherited pieces might eventually become confused with jewels available to future royal consorts. The warning sounded technical, but the late queen understood immediately what was really at stake: memory, bloodline, and control. The monarch asked for the Queen Mother's diamond tiara to be separated from the general list. A handwritten inventory sheet was placed before her, and she listened as the custodian explained the difference between private inheritance and the working collection used for official royal duties. Then came the decision. She instructed that Charlotte's name be written beside the tiara as its protected future beneficiary. The Queen paused before signing the amended record. According to the documented account preserved with the inventory, she said that some objects should travel through the family, not through the office. The wording was simple, but the meaning was unmistakable. The tiara would follow family inheritance, not whoever later held the position of queen. Camilla knew none of this when she eventually became queen. She had assumed seniority would bring access to pieces traditionally associated with powerful royal women. But the earlier instruction had been designed precisely to prevent status from overriding private ownership. Worse still, the archival file showed that the decision had been reviewed again months later. Charlotte's name remained. It was no sentimental impulse. William then learned something Catherine had never fully explained. She had once been quietly informed that several family jewels were being preserved for their children, but she had never received a complete list. That was why she understood the principle, yet remained genuinely shocked by this particular tiara. Catherine later told William privately that Charlotte must never grow up believing she had taken something from Camilla. He answered with equal calm that no inheritance would be rewritten simply to make an adult confrontation easier. That determination reached Camilla almost immediately. And when she returned to face William directly, years of silence finally gave way to something far more dangerous. Camilla did return, but she did not return calmly. The door opened while William was still speaking with the jewelers, and the atmosphere changed before she said a word. This time there were no polite questions about records, dates, or procedure. She wanted to know whether the Prince of Wales intended to defend a decision that publicly diminished the Queen. William's answer turned a painful disagreement into the confrontation everyone had been trying to avoid. Camilla had already spoken privately with Charles, but that conversation had given her no comfort. The aides now stepped farther away, leaving the family exposed to one another without the usual layer of palace protection. William remained near the table because, in his mind, the legal question was settled. The Prince of Wales, the title held by the monarch's direct heir, now cared about one thing: keeping Charlotte from becoming the price of an adult compromise. Camilla stopped directly across from him. "Do you understand what this looks like?" she asked. She said a jewel so closely tied to royal history had skipped the reigning queen and moved toward a young princess. To her, that did not feel private. It looked like a judgment. It made her position seem ceremonial, temporary, almost ornamental. William did not soften his answer. Charlotte had not created that message, he said, and she would not be made responsible for fixing it. The inheritance had been decided before the current reign. His daughter's future property could not become compensation for somebody else's insecurity. Charles flinched. The king stepped between them and told his son that the language had gone too far. William lowered his voice, but he did not withdraw the point. He told his father that changing the decision simply because it had caused pain would create something worse. The idea that Charlotte's inheritance remained vulnerable whenever a more powerful adult objected. Camilla turned on Charles. She asked whether he agreed with William. The king hesitated. That silence hurt more than the argument. Camilla understood immediately that he could not promise to reverse anything. The lead jeweler then spoke through the authenticated estate record. He explained that removing Charlotte as beneficiary would breach the private instruction and could trigger a challenge from the estate trustees, the people legally responsible for protecting property, according to the wishes attached to it. Camilla asked whether she could at least wear the tiara temporarily before Charlotte received it. The answer was cautious but devastating. Any loan would require approval from those controlling the jewel, and, eventually, from the beneficiary's representatives. Camilla stepped toward the table. She did not touch the diamonds. Instead, she folded the protective cloth back over them herself. Then put it away. William said nothing. Charles watched her turn away. But covering the tiara could not bury the conflict. Camilla had challenged William emotionally. Now Charles would try something colder, and far more difficult, discovering whether the crown itself had any power left to change the outcome. Kings can appoint, dismiss, approve, refuse, and command. But private inheritance creates a different kind of power, one that can survive even the crown itself. Charles entered the next meeting searching for room to maneuver. He wanted a compromise that protected his wife without stripping Charlotte of what had been left to her. Instead, the advisors placed a boundary in front of the monarch that even he could not cross without creating a larger crisis. Charles convened a smaller meeting with legal advisors, the jewelry custodian, and William. Camilla stayed away, convinced her husband could find a dignified solution without another confrontation. The tiara, however, sat outside ordinary crown regalia, the jewels controlled for official royal use. Its custody could involve royal institutions, but its ownership followed private estate instructions. That distinction meant power over the monarchy did not automatically create power over this diamond. The king read the decisive clause twice. He set the file down, removed his glasses, and asked whether there was any mechanism allowing the reigning monarch to reinterpret the instruction without formally challenging it. William immediately understood the danger. He told his father that even searching for a loophole could make Charlotte's inheritance appear negotiable, simply because Camilla disliked the result. Charles pushed back. He insisted he was trying to preserve family unity, not take anything from his granddaughter. William refused to accept that argument. He said unity purchased by placing pressure on a child's future rights was not unity at all. The future king reminded him that Charlotte had done nothing except have her name written into an inheritance years before she could understand what that meant. The legal advisors then delivered the boundary Charles had hoped not to hear. The tiara could be preserved, professionally conserved, displayed privately, and even loaned under narrow conditions. But its final destination remained Charlotte, unless the beneficiary line voluntarily surrendered that right. Because she was still a minor, William and Catherine effectively protected her immediate interests. That gave the prince practical influence over access, as well as an emotional reason to defend it. Charles looked directly at his son and asked the question everyone had avoided. Would William ever authorize Camilla to wear the tiara? Silence followed. William answered carefully. Not while Charlotte's inheritance itself was being challenged. Camilla received the outcome from Charles later in private. She sat without speaking until he finished. Then she asked whether William now controlled whether the queen could even borrow a jewel from her own royal family. Charles answered quietly that this was exactly the problem. The tiara belonged to the family, but it was not his to command. Camilla's anger changed after that. It became colder, quieter, more deliberate. Within hours, jewelry appointments shifted, invitations were reconsidered, and palace schedules began changing. The legal door had closed, but the emotional consequences were only beginning to move through the palace quietly at first, then all at once. The loudest royal disputes are not always the ones heard through raised voices. Sometimes they surface in cancelled fittings, altered seating plans, shortened conversations, and doors that remain closed. After the tiara decision became irreversible, Camilla stopped arguing about the document. Instead, she withdrew. Charles became increasingly isolated between two sides of his family, while William and Catherine confronted a problem they had never wanted. Charlotte's name was now attached to an adult conflict. Camilla's withdrawal changed the rhythm of the palace almost immediately. Staff began adjusting upcoming jewelry consultations because she no longer wanted historic pieces presented without clear confirmation of who actually owned them. A private collection meant jewels held by individuals or family estates, rather than automatically controlled by the crown, and after the dispute, that difference mattered to her more than ever. She wanted no more surprises, and no more rooms where ownership could suddenly become humiliation. Camilla faced another fitting that evening. An aide opened a case containing alternative diamonds intended for an upcoming engagement, but she barely reacted. After several seconds, the Queen Consort said she did not want to wear anything connected to the Queen Mother. The aide hesitated before closing the case, and Camilla repeated the instruction. This time there was no anger in her voice. That made it heavier. Charles challenged her soon afterward. He asked her not to turn one inheritance decision into a rejection of royal tradition itself. Camilla answered that tradition had already delivered its judgment about her. The king tried to separate personal hurt from institutional meaning, but she no longer believed the two could be cleanly divided. Catherine felt the damage from another direction. After dinner, she told William that she felt uneasy rather than victorious. Charlotte had never asked for the tiara, yet one day she might learn that her grandmother had walked out because the jewel was destined for her. William told Catherine they could not protect their daughter by hiding everything forever. Their responsibility, he said, was to teach Charlotte that inheritance could carry history without carrying guilt. Camilla's retreat widened again when a palace aide discovered she had removed herself from another private jewelry viewing involving heirlooms linked to earlier royal women. Charles considered approaching William and Catherine about a future ceremonial loan, meaning temporary permission to wear the piece without changing ownership. His advisors warned that asking now could look like pressure, while emotions remained raw. Charles carried the compromise briefing into his study anyway. He read the first page twice, then placed it face down. He did not tear it up. He simply decided not to send it. That restraint changed everything. The palace had tried procedure, authority, and silence. Now something more difficult was coming. Catherine would go to Camilla herself, without lawyers, jewelers, or Charles standing between them. There were no jewelers in the room, no folders, no aides, no king standing between them. Catherine entered alone and closed the door behind her, leaving two women to confront the meaning that everyone else had attached to the tiara. Camilla expected another defense of Charlotte's inheritance. Instead, the Princess of Wales said something that disarmed her immediately. Charlotte would never be told that receiving the jewel meant defeating someone else. Catherine had chosen the meeting because the dispute had moved far beyond ownership. The real danger was emotional now. Princess Charlotte, still too young to understand the full weight of royal inheritance, could one day discover that her name had become linked to Camilla's deepest sense of rejection. The Princess of Wales knew that if the family allowed that idea to grow, a jewel meant to carry memory could instead carry resentment. Camilla remained guarded. She told Catherine that Charlotte herself was not the problem. The Queen Consort said the decision had made her wonder what the family truly believed about her place in the monarchy. To her, the tiara had become a symbol of permanence, and seeing it move toward the next generation made her fear that her own place would leave no lasting trace once her time beside Charles ended. Catherine did not rush to comfort her. She answered carefully that the jewel could not become a referendum on Camilla's queenship. Charlotte was a child inheriting a decision made years earlier, not passing judgment on anyone in the present. Some inheritances, she admitted, were tied deeply to bloodline and memory. But that did not erase the relationships people built during a lifetime. Camilla's anger finally weakened. Through their private conversation, she revealed why she had truly walked out. She had never believed the tiara legally belonged to her. What devastated her was Charles's hesitation. She had expected the king to defend her symbolic place immediately, even if he could not change the inheritance. Instead, his silence had made her feel exposed. Catherine offered a different interpretation. Charles may have hesitated, she said, because he already understood he had no power to change the decision. His silence might have been helplessness, not agreement. For the first time, Camilla allowed herself to consider that possibility. Catherine then made one promise. When Charlotte eventually wore the tiara, it would never be arranged as a public triumph over Camilla or turned into a spectacle designed to reopen the wound. Camilla asked one final question. Did Charlotte know? Catherine said no. Then perhaps she shouldn't, Camilla replied, until she is old enough to understand it without inheriting our argument as well. The bitterness inside the room finally began to shrink. But outside the palace gates, the story was about to become larger than any of them could control. By morning, the story no longer belonged to the family. The detail that electrified the public was brutally simple. Camilla had left a royal jewelry meeting after being told that the Queen Mother's diamond tiara belonged to Princess Charlotte. Newspapers saw generational symbolism. Broadcasters saw a succession drama. Crowds saw something even more powerful, an old royal jewel passing toward a young princess, while the reigning queen appeared to have been left outside its line of inheritance. William saw the coverage first and immediately understood the danger. Public discussion had turned a private inheritance into a clash between title and bloodline, with Camilla on one side and Charlotte on the other. Palace Communications, the team responsible for explaining royal decisions and limiting public confusion, tried to make one point clear. Ownership of a private jewel did not change anyone's official rank. But the future king knew that simple explanations rarely survived once emotion took control of a story. Outside Buckingham Palace, the moment became impossible to contain. A crowd gathered beneath television cameras as one newspaper front page was raised above the barriers. Two photographs sat side by side, Camilla leaving a royal engagement and Princess Charlotte smiling at a family ceremony. Across the page ran 4 words: "The tiara passes to Charlotte." The image instantly reduced years of inheritance history to a brutal public contrast. William became furious when he saw his daughter's face being used that way. He told his communications team that there would be no briefing against Camilla, no suggestion that Charlotte had somehow won, and no attempt to use public sympathy as leverage. The prince wanted the inheritance protected, but he refused to let a child become the weapon used to protect it. Camilla saw the same headline and felt the irony immediately. Her original fear had been that the tiara made her look rejected. By walking out, she had created exactly that image. The Queen Consort had wanted her hurt understood privately. Now millions were reading it as a public verdict on her place. Charles reacted with equal discomfort. The king read several pages of coverage, asked for the newspapers to be removed, then requested them again later. He knew silence could not erase what had already taken hold. The palace soon issued a formal clarification, stating that the tiara was privately inherited, and that Charlotte's future ownership had no effect on Camilla's constitutional or ceremonial role, meaning her official duties and standing remained unchanged. Camilla approved the wording. That decision mattered. Later, when asked indirectly about family heirlooms during an engagement, she answered calmly that objects survive because every generation eventually learns when to pass them forward. The sentence changed the story. Charlotte keeping the tiara was no longer in doubt. What remained was whether Camilla could accept what it represented without letting that symbol define her. The diamonds had chosen their future years ago. Now the monarchy had to decide what kind of dignity it would attach to that future. In the end, nobody reversed the inheritance. No royal command was issued. No trustee was pressured into changing a name. The Queen Mother's diamond tiara remained exactly where the records placed it, protected for Princess Charlotte. But the true resolution was not written in the jewelry file. It came when Camilla stopped treating the decision as a verdict on her worth, and accepted that some royal symbols belong not to the person holding power today, but to the generation waiting beyond them. Charles made the final position clear within the family. Charlotte's designation would remain untouched. and the tiara would stay secured until she was old enough for the inheritance arrangements to take effect. Those arrangements meant the formal steps that eventually transfer control of privately inherited property to its intended recipient. The king told Camilla the matter was closed. He did not call it a defeat. He simply said he would not challenge a decision deliberately left by the previous generation. Camilla surprised him with her answer. She said he no longer needed to. The Queen Consort admitted that walking out had come from feeling excluded, not from believing the jewel legally belonged to her. She had been hurt, and she did not pretend otherwise. But she now understood that pain could not create ownership over something promised elsewhere. Charles heard the difference immediately. For the first time, acceptance had replaced argument. William changed too. Once the future king understood that Charlotte's inheritance was no longer being challenged, his defensive edge softened. He agreed that when his daughter became old enough to learn the full history, the family would tell her carefully. Camilla would not become the villain of that story, and Charlotte would never be encouraged to see the tiara as something she had won. Catherine kept the promise she had made privately. Princess Charlotte would receive the jewel as family history, not as a trophy from a conflict between generations. That mattered because the tiara had now become more than diamonds. It carried the memory of the Queen Mother, the intention of the late Queen, the pain of Camilla, and the future responsibility waiting for Charlotte. Camilla faced the final test during a later private jewelry review. She returned to the same room she had once walked out of. The tiara was not there. She noticed the empty place where its case had previously rested, paused for only a moment, and continued the meeting without asking about it. That choice mattered more than the walkout. Charlotte receiving the tiara did not diminish Camilla's crown. It revealed something deeper about monarchy. Titles belong to the present, but private legacies can move across generations, according to choices made long before anyone knows how painful those choices might become. Camilla had walked out because the diamonds seemed to tell her she had been passed over. She returned because she finally understood the jewel had never been measuring her worth at all. The tiara belonged to Charlotte. The dignity of accepting that truth belonged to Camilla. And that was the lasting meaning of the moment. The Queen Mother's diamonds moved forward to Princess Charlotte, while the family behind them finally learned that inheritance does not have to become rejection. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.